You're listening to Protecting What Matters by the Ohio Department of Commerce. Commerce is Ohio's chief regulator, and we play a vital role in keeping you safe by protecting your property, your money, and some of the products you use every day. This is designed to bring awareness to important issues and help educate consumers and businesses. Join us as we chat with trusted industry experts focused on providing you with the tools you need to help you protect what matters most in your life.
Of com.ohio.gov/DORAs, and that is a great website. As mentioned, contains a lot of the information about DORAs and how it works. Also has that information on there with that interactive website. It's a great tool where you can click and see where they're located.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Protecting What Matters. I'm your host, Brandon Klein with the Ohio Department of Commerce. Summer is around the corner, and many of you will be interested in getting outside in your local communities to dine, shop, and socialize. Designated Outdoor Refreshment Areas, also known as DORAs, have become an important part of active communities, and today you'll learn more about how they're created and how the concept has evolved. If you haven't visited a DORA yet, you'll learn where you can and as well. My first guest is Paul Kowinski, the Division of Liquor Control's Director of Licensing. Paul, thanks for joining us. My first question is, what is a DORA and how are they created?
Sure. Thanks, Brandon. Glad to be here. First, I want to point out, we get this question a lot, so I just want to make clear that a DORA does not create a liquor permit. It does not allow businesses to sell alcohol within the DORA, meaning they can't stand out in the street and start selling drinks from their business. The DORA also does not have anything to do with Ohio's wet-dry laws. You often might hear another phrase of that called local option election laws. Just want to point that out because we get questions from the consumers, we get questions from local governments at the time thinking that the DORA creates these extra permits. It does not. There's other things like community entertainment districts, revitalization districts. Those are more permit and tie into wet-dry issues. But to your question then of what a DORA is an exception to really open container laws, right? Under Ohio law, I, as a consumer, cannot take a drink and just walk down Main Street to consume it. If I did, I could be subject to citation. Similarly, a liquor permit holder has a defined premises that we deal with and sketch out before the permit gets issued. And in that instance, a permit holder cannot allow a patron to take an open drink and remove it from those premises. If they did, they'd be in violation of Ohio law. So what the DORA does is it's a locally driven process that basically makes an exception for the consumer to open container in that defined area within those precise times that it's in effect, and then also removes that violation issue for the permit holder. So again, a DORA is that outdoor refreshment area. It's a local process where the local government's going to pass some sort of resolution, some sort of ordinance, identifying the issues set forth in Ohio law, things like it has to be in a non-glass container to consume the beverage, certain sanitation requirements, certain hour requirements, boundaries, how big they want the DORA, provided it meets certain requirements set forth in Ohio law, and that is all done. And then what happens once that is done locally is they send that information to the state, being us. We review it, we make sure that it's kind of hit those check marks within Ohio law. We approve it, and as part of that process at our level, we also are identifying the permit holders that qualify to participate in the DORA within the defined boundaries provided to us. And then we notify those impacted permit holders, hey, your local government has decided to create a DORA. We've reviewed it, it's approved. And because of that, we're now updating your liquor permit with what we call a DORA, or we put ORA designation, outdoor refreshment area, on their permit, send them a communication letting them know they can now participate. They would now post that at their location on the wall so that if local law enforcement came in, they'd be able to see, hey, nope, they're a DORA location. It's okay for them to let patrons take those drinks out, provided the DORA is in effect and all the local processes that were set forth are being followed.
And so who enforces the DORA's rules?
Again, the DORA rules are enforced by local governments. If there's hour restrictions that they put on when it's in effect, what type of cups can be used, signage related to the DORA for where the boundaries lie, that would all be done through local government. Any violations of the DORA, meaning if you have patrons that are taking drinks outside the boundaries, would be a local law enforcement or potentially through the investigative unit. So those types of issues would still lie within those relevant departments. But the division is not enforcing, X bar is not using the appropriate cup. We don't have enforcement authority there. Relatedly, the signage or some of those things, right? That would be the local governments who created the DORA, the ones that would enforce those types of issues.
So if people are seeing like an issue or challenges in their DORA, they should kind of address them to local law enforcement or their city council.
Yeah, I mean, certainly they can always, if it relates to a liquor permit premise, they could always reach out and file a complaint with the division. But I think, our ability to respond or how we respond might vary depending on the type of issue that is being sent to us, right? So again, if it's perhaps this bar is selling in DORA cups and they don't have the designation, right? We might be able to refer that to public safety or take a look at different areas there. But I go back to if it's, we don't like the hours, we think they should be different, or, whether that's longer duration of time, less duration of time, different days. We appreciate and understand the concern that the local constituent may have, but that is something that we would redirect to the local government process to go through their local representatives at the local level, city council, township trustees, whatever it may be, to navigate through that process, because that is the process that created it and would also be the one that have to change it.
So to recap, there is, if it's like issues with or concerns with the structure of the DORA, probably local government's the best place to go towards.
Absolutely.
But if it's like violating the DORA rules or underage sales or any other kind of
the traditional type of liquor related issues, they're selling underage, they're selling after hours, that their permit allows. So all permits in Ohio are either 1 a.m. ceasing sales or 2:30. So if they're selling in 3 a.m. or what have you, then certainly that's an issue that they could refer to us or public safety, and we could take enforcement look at that. But like you said, structural type issues with the DORA, whether the DORA should be there or not, we've had a few over the years. We don't think this is a good idea, right? Not our place to decide on that. That's a local government decision where they thought that was appropriate or who wants to be involved. Or we've had, a few liquor permit holders say maybe they didn't want to participate. Their choice to participate or not. The DORA creation simply opens that door for those bars and restaurants that qualify to participate. Equally allows those non-liquor permit businesses to allow a patron to come in, no different than letting a patron bring in a meal or water or whatever, right? Some businesses are going to say no food or drink allowed. Some say it's okay, and they still have that choice to participate or not. But the decision of moving forward with that process is a local issue that would need to be resolved locally.
So basically, participation in DORA can be a little bit fluid at the local level, whether you're a permit holder or a non-liquor permitted business. Is in one way of looking at it, correct?
Certainly, right? Mm-hmm. Again, all the DORA essentially does, you asked the question early on and kind of to restate it, all the DORA is creating an exception to open container laws in Ohio liquor law. So the default is I cannot walk down the street with an open beer or glass of wine and consume it in public. That's the default. I can't do that. What the DORA does, and there's several other exceptions, but what the DORA does is creates an exception for that for the consuming person, that if I'm within those boundaries, I can do that and not be subject to a criminal citation. Relatedly, for the permit holder, typically, the default is I cannot let a patron take an open container, leave my business, my permit premises as defined. The DORA creates an exception for that as well, so that the business that is allowed to participate in the DORA does not get cited for that either. So really that's all it's doing. Whether those businesses want to participate or the patron wants to participate is up to them.
And if you're able to, can you talk about the distinction between the DORA and like events that have temporary liquor permits?
Sure. So again, relating back, the DORA is that exception to open container and what we normally would call removal violations for the permit holders that can participate. Temporary liquor permits, are, again, although temporary in duration of time, meaning they might last a couple days, they're for certain, non-profit-ish type related events, your fish fry, your 5K race, your, let's raise money for a great cause type of thing. But they are still at the fundamental heart, they are still retail permits. So if you had in a park a temporary liquor permit issued where they're selling beer, that is treated in Ohio law really no differently than your brick and mortar retail permit, right? So for a DORA, again, that is allowing people to take a drink from a lawfully acquired place and continue to consume it in an open space. But because that temporary permit is now treated as a separate retail location, whatever those boundaries may be, I cannot take a DORA drink into that liquor permit premise, whether it's a brick and mortar along Main Street or whether that is a temporary permit. So again, the DORA allows me to take the drink from a location into the public, but I cannot take a liquor drink from one location that has a permit into another location that also has a liquor permit. That would not be allowed. And temporary permits would be no different.
Thanks for listening to Protecting What Matters. Cryptocurrency continues to be in the news. Stories of crypto millionaires have attracted some investors to try their hand at investing in cryptocurrencies or crypto-related investments. Our Division of Securities attorney, John Criss, reminds you that investing in cryptocurrency products can be risky.
And so if you are getting involved into a cryptocurrency investment, you need to be aware that it's oftentimes not based on, the valuation is oftentimes not based on the cash flow being produced, but in reality it's just being based on some appreciation of the price that you hope will happen and may not. So it gets back to, we want people to be aware of the risks of these investments and be aware of what they're getting themselves into before they get into it.
For more information and tips on investing, visit com.ohio.gov.
Welcome back to this episode of Protecting What Matters. With me for this second segment is Paul Kwinski, our Director of Licensing from the Division of Liquor Control. Last segment, we talked about what DORAs are and how they are created. How many DORAs, Paul, does the state have at this point?
Currently, we have 146 active DORAs within the state of Ohio.
Mm-hmm. And as you mentioned in the last segment, when did we start seeing that kind of number kind of increase?
First DORA was in 2015 with Middletown. I think we've seen a gradual increase, but certainly during the COVID pandemic, I think we saw a little bit more of an uptick. And I think it's kind of caught on, right? That local governments, as they've been created, I think my gut would be that a lot of local governments see this as an opportunity to do something a little different for their downtown, maybe bring in some business that otherwise maybe patrons wouldn't visit. So I think it's just another tool in the kit that they can use to drive local business into certain areas that they want to have. And again, we've seen locations like Columbus or other cities, maybe with sporting venues, trying to find different ways, pre or post game, to allow people to engage and have a little bit more of a different atmosphere than you might otherwise have. So I think fundamentally, right, because it's a locally driven process, each DORA is slightly different, right? Some locations might have it every weekend, some have it for certain events, some may have different hours, but I do think we've seen a gradual uptick that continues to kind of go up each year.
What kind of questions do you normally get from local governments who look into creating a DORA?
Typical questions, I think, would be generally along the lines of, what do I do? How do I get started? How do I approve this? What do we have to send the division? What information do we need? And we normally will certainly assist, but also redirect them back to our website with com.ohio.gov/DORAs. There is information on there not only for the public to be able to see all the DORAs that are active, see their boundaries, and kind of understand from a consumer perspective what the DORA allows them to do, but equally there's information on there for the local governmental process, identifying to them what they need to do, both locally, but equally for us, and what we need sent to us so that we can identify those appropriate liquor permit holders and make sure we're notifying them timely that they now can participate in a DORA if it's approved.
Mm-hmm. And let's say, for the communities that now have a DORA, do they have to renew them on a periodic basis with the division? How does that work?
Statutorily, they're required to renew them every 5 years and go through a renewal review/process. So that would be something they would be needed to do And we have seen ones where local governments, as mentioned, I think early in the first segment, want to expand or want to change some of the boundaries. So we have that process, or equally, we'll see a lot, especially in newer developments, depending where it's located, where maybe the boundaries haven't changed, but the streets have been changed. Maybe they've added streets since the time, or they've reassigned street numbers, what have you. So again, there's kind of a constant back and forth with local governments for us to be able to stay informed, so that we can make sure we are properly identifying the boundaries and identifying the right permit holders within those boundaries so that they can partake in this process.
Have there ever been any cancellations of a DORA or expansions?
As mentioned, there's been, I think, a fair amount of expansions. We have had technically, I think, 2 dissolutions, but really was more of a modification where maybe they dissolved the one DORA but recreated it a little bit differently, just how they wanted to go about it through a local process. But I'm not aware that there have been any that have totally disbanded and have not in some form reconstituted in another way, that they've said, oh, we don't like this and we're just going to stop it and not have a DORA in some form existing elsewhere.
So it seems like this concept's working out pretty well just based on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure we can speak to that. We don't keep, other than the number of how many there are, we don't keep statistics on economic impacts. We don't have that data. We don't, poll the consuming public on how they feel about it. So not sure we're really positioned to truly say if it's working or not. All I can say is, I guess, we have 146, more continue to come in. The legislature continues to modify the rules a little bit to make it easier access potentially. So if you want to draw the conclusion it's working, sure. But I don't think we as the division have that direct data to point to numbers and say, this has impacted permit holders or increased the revenues, or X amount of Ohioans love it and want to keep it. I don't know if we could say that.
I think this is a good point to say, for if there's consumers out there who want to learn more about DORAs or the DORA in their community, what resources does the division have that might be of use to them?
Yeah, I'll plug it again. We have com.ohio.gov/DORAs, and that is a great website. As mentioned, contains a lot of the information about DORAs and how it works, but also has that information on there with that interactive website. It's a great tool where you can click and see where they're located. You can see the boundaries and see where it is, but moreover, if we have that information available provided to us from local governments, we've linked to potential websites that they have locally. Some local governments have actually created their own DORA website. Some it might just link to their government page so that you can find who to contact, but we do have that information available. And it does give you also a snapshot of what the DORA is called and kind of some of that biographical type information, if you will. But that'd be a great resource to go to. And we actually point a lot of liquor permit applicants to that location because we ask a question about that on our applications to say, hey, go to this website and look, are you in a DORA? Help us help you identify that, and maybe would help speed up the process too. So even for liquor permit holders, maybe something came along and we weren't notified of a boundary change or a street difference change, right? So in our records, we might not have it, but they can see that. And if there's certainly some discrepancy or they think they're in a DORA and they haven't been notified, you can look there and certainly reach out to us and we'll take a look and correct it if need be.
So basically a website, one key feature is that map of DORAs.
Absolutely. And we're looking to increase that to other avenues as well, community entertainment districts and revitalization districts, trying to get a map there too. But yeah, that map I think is a great tool, and my understanding has been pretty useful for local governments and otherwise to draw on that. So that's certainly one place we always direct people to when we get initial questions.
It's your money, come and claim it. The Ohio Department of Commerce Division of Unclaimed Funds is safeguarding nearly $4 billion in unclaimed funds. So there's a good chance you or someone you know has money waiting to be claimed. Just head over to our website, unclaimedfunds.ohio.gov, to search for your name, the name of a family member, or a loved one to see if you have an unclaimed fund.
Welcome back to the final segment of Protecting What Matters. We turn our attention to Ohio's first DORA in Middletown, Ohio. With me to talk about it we have Lisha Moreland, the city's Assistant Director for Economic Development, and Middletown Economic Development Program Manager Jacob Schulte. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us. It's
Thank
great
you.
to be here.
Great. Well, to get right into it, you were the first Ohio community to create a DORA, as we mentioned. Can you give us the history on that, and why did you decide to create a DORA when no one else had done so? Were there any specific reasons or motivations?
So back in about 2015, the city decided to take the first leap, as well as our downtown collaboration partner, Downtown Middletown Inc., as a way to kind of encourage some of our small businesses to kind of expand their operations and help allow the food and bev retail section of our downtown to kind of more flourish, to grow in collaboration with some of our events. We have quite a few parks in the downtown as well as plazas, and finding a way to connect those park and plaza events with our downtown businesses, the DORA was one way that we were able to kind of bridge that gap. So it was a collaboration effort between the city of Middletown as well as some of our downtown merchant groups, just to kind of help flourish and grow the opportunities that those businesses have.
And did you guys have any trepidations going into it, or it was like, hey, this is a great opportunity? Any thoughts on that?
I think generally at the time, city staff as well as the community were pretty supportive of it. Our downtown merchant group, there's always been a lot of food and bev businesses, particularly ones that had alcohol sales. And I think it was just a good step to kind of help build out some of the vibrancy down there. So I think generally we didn't have too many hiccups. Obviously, safety and sanitation were always a concern, but in our development and enactment of the DORA, both the safety and sanitation plan were approved by council.
So tell me a little bit more about how your DORA operates in general. What are some of the highlight features that you think are worth mentioning?
Yeah, so our DORA, 7 days a week, noon to midnight. I guess the biggest caveat to it, the city of Middletown ourselves, we don't, handle the day-to-day operations. We're currently in a contractual agreement with our downtown merchants group, Downtown Middletown Inc., and they kind of handle the disbursement of the cups. So the cups themselves, it's a $1 surcharge. So any patron, if you're at a local bar or restaurant downtown and you want to utilize the DORA, you just have to ask the bartender to put it into a DORA cup, obviously. And there are boundaries and segments that for permission to go into the DORA. So it's been a pretty good program. I think the main highlights of the DORA are events. So when we do First Friday events downtown or other events on the weekends and stuff, DORA is really heavily promoted. I think it still gets some activity and use during the weekdays when certain businesses may be doing events and activities. But the general, highlight are when we have downtown-wide events.
We also have, so while we have city events, we have events that are sponsored by the Downtown Middletown Inc. We'll short that by calling them DMI. So when they as well have events that coincide with the DORA boundaries, it just allows for more utilization of the DORA opportunities. Now, the one thing you can't do is you can't take your drink in a DORA cup to another DORA establishment. You have to make sure you finish the beverage before you take it in there.
And do you guys have any blackout dates for the DORA, or when it's like, hey, we don't think the DORA is appropriate for the DORA to be active during this time, during this particular event? Do you have situations like that?
No, it's pretty much 7 days a week. Obviously, weather's going to impact that. Obviously, it's not going to be that busy if the weather's not good. But other than that, it's 7 days a week.
You guys touched on it a little bit, but tell me overall, how has the DORA impacted the community since you've had it, and what's the experience been like?
It's been a great experience. Like Jacob mentioned earlier, we've not really had any hiccups. It's been embraced quite well within the community, so much so that we get requests to expand the boundaries, which we did in 2020. So we expanded it a couple of blocks, and future expansions will be on an as needed, as requested basis. So the mere fact that we've had requests to expand it, and we did, I think is a good indicator that it's very well embraced.
Aside from the business side, how accepting has the community, like the residents or people who come and visit your community? How accepting of the DORA has it been from their perspective?
Very accepting. I think that's the reason that we have even more events on the calendar to take advantage of the DORA district. Folks do want to come downtown, mill around, have a beverage, enjoy the shopping, just sort of commune together, if you will, as residents. That just creates opportunities to have more events to utilize the DORA district.
Are there any events that come to mind that are a result because of the DORA or have been enhanced because of it?
Oh gosh, yeah. Well, Women, Wine, and Chocolate, which Jacob just mentioned. There's quite a few others.
Mm-hmm. A lot of our parades in the downtown heavily utilize it. We've got a few different stuff. One in particular that's been pretty successful and continuing to grow. Very Merry Middletown. So it's a collaboration of the DMI as well as the city and some other partners to kind of help encourage a lot more Christmas activities right around the late holidays, November, December, going into January. And I think there's some pretty good utilization there as well. But like I said, a lot of your Saturday events have continued, especially the ones DMI host, as well as city parades have continued to flourish, I think, as a result of the DORA opportunities.
Speaking of parades, so we had our first annual St. Patty's Day parade, and that was very well attended. So looking at some of the AI data that we're now starting to play with a little bit, that brought in about 2,100 visitors to that event that then was able to take advantage of the DORA district.
And I take it since you guys have had it since 2015, there haven't been really that many issues or challenges. And if so, what were they?
No, we've not really had any challenges at all. Thank goodness. Knock on wood. I'll knock on wood when I say that. I think just making sure we don't run out of cups.
Yeah, cup inventory and I guess the disbursement of the charge there, whether it's the patron or the business. I guess that might have been a conversation of contention for the last couple of years as to whether or not you want to put the money, the cost of that cup onto the consumer or if it's ultimately ate by the business itself. I think that's a conversation we continue to have and to see, which one works best. But outside of, that general logistics of the cup inventory, I don't believe we've had any significant problems there.
Aside, you mentioned it earlier about expansion requests and whatnot. Have there been any other changes or tweaks to your DORA?
Not since that. Enacting the safety plan and the sanitation plan shortly after the DORA was implemented, and then the expansion. Those are really the major ones.
Looking back since you've had this DORA, how would you say, how did it play out the way you expected it would? Or was there any surprises? And then to follow up with is there a good resource for folks to learn more about your DORA?
No major surprises. I don't know that we had any particular notion as to how it should go. It was the fact that it was embraced and supported, I think was helpful in that we didn't have to have any surprises. And, continuing to look at potential expansion opportunities is always something that we want to continue dialogue about with our businesses and how that can be helpful for them. And as far as additional information, the best place to go is to the DMI website. So that's downtownmiddletown.org.
Well, thanks so much for your guys' time. Thanks, Lisha and Jacob, for joining us today's segment of Protecting What Matters. And then I'll just turn it over to our listeners just to tell them again, thank you for listening to this episode. You can find our interactive map and learn more at com.ohio.gov/DORAs.